Hi everyone, I'm back today with another fun festive make. Today I'm going to show you how to stitch up this easy embroidered Christmas tree. This makes a great Christmas decoration and a lovely gift. Let's have a look at what you'll need to get started. The first thing you'll need is an embroidery hoop prepped with your fabric. I've gone for a 6-inch hoop with natural calico cotton fabric. For the tree itself, I've got this jute trim which I picked up in my local craft store. You could use regular ribbon instead if you wanted to. I've got these 6mm craft bells. You will need a selection of embroidery threads to piece the tree together and to also add some decoration. And finally, you will need some basic embroidery tools. I've got my ruler, my needle and my thread snippers. So the first thing we're going to do is cut the jute trim to the correct lengths for the Christmas tree. So we'll need 5 lengths of trim all together. In the description, you'll find the lengths of trim you'll need, and this is based on using a 6-inch hoop for this. So once you've cut your lengths of trim, you should have 5 a little bit like this, so longer at the bottom, going up to shorter at the top. So now we're ready to start attaching our trim to the embroidery hoop. So I'm just going to grab the bottom length of trim and I'm just going to line it up on my hoop and make sure I'm happy with the position of it and making sure I'm leaving room at the bottom for the tree trunk. So I'm happy with this, it's a good position, and I'm going to use embroidery thread to attach it. I'm going to use 3 strands of thread for this, and I'm just going to, again, just make sure that trim is nice and straight and I'm happy with the position. Now I'm just going to grab my hoop and using my thumb I'm just going to hold the trim in place, and I'm just going to push the needle up through the fabric and then make a stitch just across a small part of the trim, and this is just going to hold it in place. So that's my first stitch in place. Now I'm just going to work my way down the trim, just adding some little couching stitches just to hold it in place really nice and securely. And again here I'm just going to add another one, so I'm just going to add a sort of about 5 or 6 stitches along this length. I tried to colour match the embroidery thread to the trim as close as possible just to make the stitches look really subtle. This is now holding in place really nicely, so I'm just going to continue adding some more stitches. So just adding in the last stitch of this length, there we go, and that's our first bit of trim attached to the fabric. So now I'm ready to add the second length, so I'm going to use the exact same method, so I'm just going to spin it around, hold my thumb on the trim to keep it in place, and I'm just going to add in those tiny couching stitches along the length of the trim. So here is our second piece of trim attached, and now I'm just going to work my way up and add the remaining 3 pieces. So now I've added on all 5 pieces of the trim, it's time to decorate the tree. So I'm going to start off by using these little 6mm craft bells. Now I'm going to attach these to the tree using just 3 strands of embroidery thread. So I've pushed my needle up through where I want to place the first bell, and I'm just going to slide the bell just onto the needle. It's got a little hole at the top. And I'm just going to slide it on there, and now I'm just going to push my needle back through the fabric, and that's just going to secure the bell in place. There we go, that's our first one attached. So now using the exact same method, I'm just going to work my way down the lengths of trim, just adding little bells. So that's the bells all added on, and now it's time to add some little stars. For these, I'm going to use this lovely DMC Light Effects embroidery thread, and I'm just going to use 2 strands. Starting down here in the bottom corner, I'm going to add some straight stitch stars. So I've just pushed my needle up through the fabric, and I'm just going to push it back down just to create the first spoke of the star. Now this is using straight stitch, so it's completely beginner friendly. So that's the first stitch in place. Now I'm just going to work my way around, adding 4 more spokes, and then just bringing them all back into the centre, just like this. So I'm just going to add in the final spoke of this star now, just pushing my needle back through the centre. There we go, and that is our first star in place. And now I'm just going to add some more stars to the other pieces of trim. So now we've added on our stars and our bells, I'm going to add some little fairy lights using French knots. So for this, I've got some yellow embroidery thread and I'm going to use 6 strands. So I'm going to start again just down here on the bottom piece of trim, and I'm just going to push my needle up through the fabric. There we go. And I'm just going to pull my thread all the way through. Now I'm just going to place the hoop back down on the table, and I'm going to wrap the thread around the needle twice and then just push that needle back through. And then just pulling that thread all the way through. Just make sure it's not going to get tangled, and there we go. That is our first French knot in place. And now I'm just going to add fairy lights to the other pieces of trim. So now we've added the fairy lights, it's time to add a little trunk to the tree. For this, I'm going to use satin stitch, and I'm going to use 3 strands of brown thread. So I'm just adding my first satin stitch, so I'm just pulling that thread all the way through. Now I'm going to thicken up the trunk. I'm just going to stitch about 3 or 4 satin stitches. So I'm just going to push that needle back through next to that first stitch. And then I'm just going to pull that thread all the way through. Again, making sure it doesn't get tangled with the little bells. I'd like the tree trunk to be a little bit thicker, so I'm just going to add 2 more satin stitches. And here we go, there is our finished tree trunk. The last thing we're going to add to our little tree is a star. So I've got my yellow embroidery thread, I've got 2 strands, and to stitch this I'm going to use another beginner friendly embroidery stitch called Backstitch. If you're new to embroidery, you can find a range of beginner friendly embroidery stitch tutorials over on my channel. These include straight stitch and backstitch, both of which we've used to create this Christmas tree. So here is our finished Christmas tree. Now if you want to hang it up, all you need to do is add a little piece of ribbon to the hoop fastening at the top. Will you be giving this one a go? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching. Happy stitching.